You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 319, How Intentional Action Leads to Exceptional Results with James Brackin. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm looking forward to you getting to meet our guest, James. James Brackin is a personal coach helping entrepreneurs get to the root of their self-sabotage so they can take intentional action and achieve their goals. He's also the host of the Top 1% podcast, the You Can Too podcast. Before we dive in and meet James, I would like to invite you to take my next level business owner quiz. I would love for you to head on over to amberdelagarza.com/quiz. Take this quick 3-minute quiz to find out what is most holding you back from taking your business to the next level so that you can receive a curated personal playlist from the podcast that addresses those specific challenges in your business. To get those solutions directly into your inbox, head on over to amberdelagarza.com/quiz. And now let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Hey, James, thank you for being here today. How are you?
I am blessed. I am cold, that is for sure. I'm in upstate New York, so it's like 10 degrees out right now, but doing well. I'm grateful to be with you.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. I'm in Vegas, so I have no room. No room to speak. Although I think I did mutter the words to my son, 13-year-old son, as we left the house is, oh, it's going to be a cold one today. I guess I can take that back, right?
You can definitely take that back, but it's all relative, right? We're all from different places. I get it. I definitely get it.
Yeah.
This is our first snow, so I mean, it's just coming down. Sure.
It is all relative. My kid's wearing like shorts and a t-shirt. I think I said it so he'd go get a jacket, which didn't help the situation. But anyways, well, thank you so much. I want to just dive into, share us with your story about why we get to talk about intentional action and why does that topic matter to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say this to preface is that I'm 20 years old. So to be on this podcast, I'm usually most people's youngest guest, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started my coaching business, started my podcast and everything that I do now at 17. So I feel like almost a veteran at this. I'm almost at the same amount of episodes as you are, but you're still ahead. So you're crushing it. I lost a lot of family growing up. So my father and uncle both passed away at 37. And my uncle passed away a few months before his retirement. So he passed at 66, but he worked his entire life to not even be able to enjoy his retirement or get to experience it all. And so what that really instilled into me was that I need to live with intention, right? Many people go through life, what I see it as is coasting through life. Even going to college, I never went to college. It didn't make sense for me. For a lot of people, it makes sense. And for other people, they go because they want to coast is what I like to call it. Coasting is essentially going to college to allow yourself to not figure out what you want to do because you're not sure and you don't want to go through the trial and error that you're going to have to go through to figure out what that path actually is for you. And I find a lot of people go through life just not doing what fulfills them and going through life just not being intentional about their time. And it's so precious. And I don't think we put that into perspective enough.
Wow, that was a good backstory of obviously this is exactly what we're meant to talk about today.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a left. Was it your life experiences that made you ambitious and intentional? Do you feel like it was a combination of that and your personality? I just shared with you, I have a 13-year-old son. And what I want most is that he's very intentional and ambitious about whatever lights him up, right? Whatever that looks like for him. I'm just curious, was this who you've always been? Did you grow into this?
I think I did grow into it. I think, I mean, I remember times when I used to be in school. I couldn't even tell you how young I was, probably around the age of your son. I'd go to school, I'd come home, I'd play video games, and that's what my day would look like, right? I'd get so excited to play video games. I played baseball ever since I was 3. So I was the kid that was at my school, we didn't have workouts for baseball. We had practice, but we didn't have workouts. So I would go work out with the football team, and then I would go to baseball practice. So from first thing in the morning, I'm going to school, and then I go to workouts, and then I go to baseball. And so I've always been like a workhorse, I guess you can call it, just overworking myself to an extent where I tore my labrum because of it. And so I think it was definitely in me at all times, but I definitely believe that, COVID happened for me, and that was a big isolation for a lot of people. What it really did for me, I was in 11th grade when that happened, and it just forced me to go inside. And I always felt like a victim, like life was happening to me. There was a moment in my life when I asked, how is this happening for me? That my life completely changed. That sounds crazy, but really asking a different question is going to give you a different answer. I tell people, clients often, that your brain is like ChatGPT. If you want a different answer, you have to give it a different question. And so I asked a different question. It prompted a different answer. I realized that losing family and going through depression and anxiety and all the things that made me feel so alone and like there was nothing to look forward to was helping me so that I could help other people in the future.
And then you, in the 11th grade, started a podcast. Like, let's just get into some of your history.
Yeah.
Like, so you asked that question, what's life doing for you? It answered. And then it sounds like it prompted like some big decisions in your life.
Yeah. So I didn't start the podcast till after high school. So 11th grade was when COVID happened. That's when I started getting into books. I was someone that took a lot of pride in never reading, I'll tell you that. And if you could see the amount of books that I have in my room, I know you can see a few behind me, but the amount that I have so many books that my bookcase broke recently. And I'm getting books all the time because of the authors that I have on the show. And so I read a lot, and what really came to me was that I can change the way I feel about myself. One thing that I think a lot of us struggle with, especially with social media now, is comparing ourselves and feeling like we are not good enough, that we are not worthy. And that was definitely something that I struggle with. We're always overcoming that. And so it propelled me into personal development, listening to podcasts, reading books. And when I left high school, I knew that college never made sense for me. I never liked the idea of this is how much I get for this amount. Like, I make this amount of money each hour. It just never made any sense. I never did. And it frustrates me to this day that people still live in that kind of cycle because they're living for the weekend. And so what that did for me was, okay, maybe real estate's the answer. I was listening to a lot of bigger podcasts at the time. And so my first thought was, if I want to get into real estate, I need to get around people that are in real estate, the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So I went to the richest area in my state, and I said, I'm going to go there and surround myself with those kind of people because they're probably have different mindsets than where I come from. And I surrounded myself with them. I was working with them before I turned 18. So I was 17 years old working with the real estate team. I couldn't even get my license at the time. They looked at me like I was nuts.
I just have to interject. I was too. I started my junior year. Cool. I went to school 4 days and I interned 1 day in real estate for the same reasons, and wanting to circle myself around and do things and see things that I would have never saw from my childhood. Yeah, it's very similar. Okay, go ahead. I want to hear more.
No, yeah, it's powerful stuff, but they'd never seen anyone do that before. And so they looked at me like I was crazy. What I realized in that process, so I was home from school because I had 2 classes. I was in 12th grade at the time, and I wasn't going to go to school because COVID was happening. I'm not going to waste my time going there. And so all I did for probably 6 months was just take the course online to become a real estate agent. So by the time I'm 18, I could take the test and I'm getting going. This sounds crazy, but I never took the test. So I spent all that time and helped. And what it did was it helped me realize that wasn't the path I wanted to go down. I realized in the process of becoming a real estate agent that I wanted to be an investor, not an agent. And that's something I still want to pursue in the future. But as I've gotten to coaching and everything else, my purpose, I've never felt more fulfilled. And this is what I've leaned into ever since. So I did everything. And then I never went into real estate because I realized it wasn't for me. I used to see it as a waste of time, and I think it definitely helped me become a different person. So I don't see it as a waste of time anymore. But I think a lot of people, to end this, a lot of people are afraid to go down a path because they think it's a waste of time. And what if it doesn't work out? I believe that the biggest waste of time is sitting in indecision and not doing anything at all, because that taught me a lot. I wouldn't have got into what I'm doing now if I didn't go down that path and realize that it wasn't the path for me.
Yes, that's incredibly powerful. And I'm just going to piggyback on that story, is that I had this idea when I was in high school that I wanted to do real estate. And it was for all the wrong reasons. It was because they drove nice cars. They got to sell pretty houses. It was the romanticizing of it. Then I went to college, and I also worked in real estate the whole time. I got licensed at 18. So I did get licensed. But after college and getting a degree in real estate and business management, I hated it. So very similar. My road's a little bit longer, but I'll tell you that that moment when I said, oh my gosh, like I've done 6 years. So between high school and college, 6 years investing in this career that I thought I wanted. I hate every bit of selling real estate. And so to live intentionally was to walk away from all those decisions and not have guilt and be like, okay, so what did I enjoy about this journey? And when I asked, what did I enjoy about that journey? I was able to do a pivot, which led me over a decade later coaching and honestly 2 decades later running this business. So we never know in the moment what decisions we're going to make. But I think what was similar between you and I was we are willing to walk down the path and keep tuning into what actually like inspired us. What did we want to do?
So true. The sunken cost fallacy gets in a lot of people's way, right? Like
Yes.
okay, I'm going down this path. Now I need to go down this path. That's why a lot of people go to college and they end up never using their degree because it's like, okay, I'm already a couple years in. I might as well finish it at this point. And I realized that when I was going to become a real estate agent was, okay, I've got this far. I'm surrounding myself with the people that are doing what I want to do. I realized that becoming an agent is pretty much working for a client. I'm not working for myself as much as I thought I was. And that was like the thing that was like, oh, okay, this isn't the path I want to go down. And so the 6, 12 months, however much time I spent doing it was like, okay, this may be a waste of time, but I don't want to waste more time because
Yeah.
it's just hurting me even further. So I love that. That's awesome.
All right. So you decide you're not doing real estate. And then how did that lead into coaching? And I just feel like there's going to be a lot of ahas here because we're talking to business owners, and I don't care what age you are. It's a scary leap to decide I'm going to do this. It's a scary leap to say, do I have the experience? And you moved forward with intention. And so we'll get into more about the intentional action, but obviously you're living that out. So I just want to hear more of your story.
Yeah, I love it. The coaching was something that I didn't expect. And I'll say this for everyone that's feeling imposter syndrome or I don't have the experience, that kind of thing. I was 17 years old becoming a life coach. That doesn't make any sense. Even to this day, I'm 20 years old, still is like crazy to me, right? I was listening to a podcast, and at the end of the podcast, they talked about a coaching program. I had no idea what a coach was at the time. I knew I wanted to start a podcast. I didn't have the courage to do it at the time because I didn't invest in myself and I had nothing on the line. It was never pushed myself. I was afraid of others' opinions. And I ended up on a sales call probably the next day because I signed up for whatever it was to learn more about the coaching program. And within a few hours, or probably about an hour and a half, I was on a sales call. I invested more money than I had in my bank account and just bet on myself. I think a lot of us, we don't trust our intuition much. And so we stay down a path going back to the sunken cost fallacy. And I really trusted my intuition. I felt like this was the right thing. I felt like I went through all this trial and tribulation throughout my life. And I'm so young already. Imagine if I got started now and started helping people along their journey. Because I know that at the time I didn't know this, but you don't have to have all the answers. And especially as coaches, we don't have the answers. We have the questions. That's something that I continue to tell people that are, how do you do this? And I always go back to that. But that was one thing that really stuck for me and helped me progress in that. But I didn't expect to get into coaching. I hopped on a sales call, invested more money than I had, and I was forced to make it happen.
Yeah. All right. So talk to me about your opinions about why intentional action. Or even let's start at the beginning. How do you define intentional action? What is it?
Yeah. I think intentional action is knowing that what you're doing with your time is something that you wouldn't regret doing with your time. So whether it's this podcast, I recorded a solo episode before this, and then before that, I recorded another podcast with someone else. I think it's being intentional with your time that when you get to the end of your day, do you see it as a success or do you see it as I didn't do everything that I could have done?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that you're working until you can't work anymore, but it's just saying, okay, in the beginning of my day, what does success look like for me? What are the things that if I get this done by the end of the day is a success? That could be one thing, that could be three things. Doesn't matter what it is. But many of us go into our day, especially entrepreneurs, we don't know what we're going to do with our time. And we're focusing on a bunch of different things instead of the most important things.
Yeah.
And so being intentional with your time is saying, okay, I'm going to eat the frog first thing in the morning, and then I'm going to do all the maintenance tasks later in the day. I'm going to do all the things that have to get done later because I need to focus on the priority first. And so it's just being intentional is just doing the things that you will be grateful that you did later on.
Yeah. So the way that I share that with my clients is, what do we need to do to move you from being reactive to proactive? And intentional is a better word, but mostly what you were describing is that somebody wakes up, they own a business, they're winging it. It's who's in their email, who's text messaging them, what employee called out, what client needs them, and they're truly in business doing things that they never dreamt of when they had the idea, hey, I'm going to be a business owner. That wasn't a day in the life that they thought. And yet day after day becomes firefighting, putting out problems, just being busy to be busy because that feels good in the moment. But what you're talking about is how do you prioritize the things that when you hit the pillow at the end of the night, you're exhausted, but you're fulfilled. You're not exhausted and depleted and discouraged. So when you're talking to people about intentional action, how do you help them find the thing that they want to be intentional about? That's what I often get the question. So I just want to throw it to you. I get the question of, great, so what's the best use of my time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really is. A lot of people get to the end of their day with a full day, but not a fulfilled day. And that's a big difference. I think one thing is just getting clear on what you want. I recently had a podcast with Michael Bungay Stanier. He wrote The Coaching Habit. I don't know if you know of it. It's the best coaching book of the past decade, actually. It's definitely a good read for coaches. My first coach recommended it to me. And he was speaking about one question he's asking himself every day. And it's that, what do I want? Because for many of us, we don't really know what we want. We don't know what that guiding light is. What is that goal that I want to move towards so that I know what the most important task is every day? And if you don't have some kind of guiding light, some goalpost in the future, because I like to see as goals as not something to attach to. The thing that I think of, and I talk to clients a lot about, is your idea of success should be your standard. So it's, are you doing what you said you would do? Success should be the action instead of the achievement. And so what are those actions? But you need to know what the achievement is to know what the actions are. You need to know what you're moving towards to know what are the things I need to move towards every day, because you have to have one big thing to focus on all the small things every day.
Yeah. We're recording this mid-January. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to come out, but I just put out an episode. It was actually the first episode of the new year. And the direction I went was something different than I have in other years. You know, at the beginning of the year, everyone wants to talk about goal setting. And I have a lot of episodes about goal setting. But this year, I did an episode on exactly what you're talking about. What is your vision of success so that you can create goals that matter? Oftentimes we go straight into the goals, but we're not really clear, like, are those goals actually going to propel us towards what we view as successful in our personal lives and our business? Does that all work together? Or are you creating these goals in your business that you're going to work really hard to achieve, but it is at odds with, say, your relationship goals, your personal care goals, your having any kind of balance outside of just business? So starting first with vision of the whole picture can ensure you're setting yourself up for the right goals in the business.
It couldn't be more accurate, right? Like if you're, that's why for people that, I mean, I've spoken with many people on my podcast that have sold their business for $200 million plus, thinking that most people see that as, okay, when I get there, then that's a success, right? But that's not the reality of it. There's many people that are successful externally, but not successful internally. And this is how I see it: is if you're a multimillionaire, but your relationships are in shambles, you're not successful to me. That's not success. And so I'm right with you on that. You have to prioritize it all.
Yeah. You know, I get a front row seat to my clients coming to me, you know, they're successful. Like by the time the client's working with me, they've been in business, they're seasoned. And somewhere along that journey, they have made sacrifices that are huge sacrifices. I mean, I got clients that come to me and say, like, if I don't get my business under control, if I don't get my time management under control, I might lose my marriage. Or my doctor said that if I don't get my stress under control, like I'm on my way to a heart attack. So when they come to me and they've hit those bottoms, it's like, okay, I have this runaway business. Like I have a team, I have success, I have money, and none of that matters when the people you love and the relationships you have are at jeopardy because of that quote unquote success, or you have put yourself bottom of the list and not taken care of yourself because your business needs you. Like it needs you to show up your best. And so it just breaks my heart that I see that so frequently, and I know that it doesn't need to be that way. And so that's really what, you know, I work on too with my clients is like, all right, well, let's take a step back. Like, okay, you made the money. We're going to continue to make the money, but we have to have an and. I call it the and method. So my business makes X or whatever goal you want to put on the left, and I have healthy relationships, and I'm at home for dinner by 6 o'clock, and I work out. How do you make that formula fit and work for your life? Whatever that unique formula is for you based on your vision of success.
I love it. The one thing that has stuck with me these past few years that I press into clients a lot is all that matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And
Mm,
so it shines through that you can have all the success in the world, but if you're sitting by yourself and you're not happy with your relationships, you're not happy with how you feel about yourself, you're not successful. And that's going to trickle down into every area of your life, whether that's health, wealth, relationships, spirituality, whatever it comes down to. If you don't feel good about yourself when you're by yourself, that needs to be everything.
yeah.
I truly believe that your professional development will never exceed your personal development. And so if you're not working on yourself, well, the business isn't going to thrive no matter how much you feel like it is. And so I love that. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that.
Do you find that the people that you talk to or work with have a difficult time being alone? Like they keep themselves so busy in the business for that reason? Like they don't want to hear themselves, their thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much the thoughts that they have, but I think it's this supposed to mindset or
Mm,
this I think so many of us, especially entrepreneurs, have it, right? We have all the time in the world. We can always be doing something. I should be doing this. I'm supposed to be working right now. The idea of should is something that I've thrown away out of my vocabulary because should is shame. I've replaced
mm,
it. That's how it is. Because anytime you're saying should, you're pretty much just shitting on yourself. Is the best way
yeah.
to see it. And so I say that a lot with clients. So I think a lot of it is just detaching themselves, and that's why I said earlier, like the goal should be the action, not the achievement. Because if we attach ourselves to the achievement instead of the action, we're never going to be fulfilled because we're always going to be in pursuit of more. And I think that's just something that many of us struggle with, especially in business, for sure.
Yeah. So, what is your advice to consistently take intentional action?
I think knowing what you want is a big thing. I think one thing that I would say that I have a different perspective on it. A lot of people is this idea of vision. Like I don't set goals for 5, 10 years, anything like that. One thing I think that's important that is, I think a different perspective is that we should optimize for enjoyment instead of progress. Because when we're always trying to progress more, we often miss out on what life is. And that's pretty much every single day, right? Like 99% of the time, if you think of the in-between days is what I like to call it, right? Like you're going to have 10, 20, 30 big moments in your life where you achieve everything that you're looking for, whether it's buying a house, buying your new car, having a kid, whatever it is. But all the in-between days that you just throw away because you're just trying to move forward and move forward and move forward, you're missing out on what life is. So optimizing for enjoyment is almost intentional in such a way, because if you're doing the things that you enjoy, coaching, podcasting, I enjoy the things that give me energy instead of take energy away from me. I will be progressing anyways, but I don't always have to be in this constant pursuit of more. So I think trying to do that in every area of your life will allow you to just live much more intentionally, but also enjoy that purpose in itself as well. Because I think the whole purpose of life is to enjoy the passage of time.
Yeah. I mean, that's a reframe. And I didn't always see it that way. My natural tendency was very goal oriented, right? And there is a light side and a dark side to that. And the light side is what everyone sees, like, wow, I wish I was as goal oriented as you. But what they don't see is the dark side, that I would be so laser focused to the future that I would often miss the journey there. And part of me growing up and asking different questions and like, well, that's interesting. I'm really good at hitting goals, but why doesn't it feel as fulfilling? And it wasn't what we were speaking about earlier. It wasn't that these goals didn't matter. They weren't aligned with my vision. It was that in the moment of achieving those goals, it didn't feel satisfactory because I was always looking at like, okay, what's next? What's next? And one of the things that had happened also with that, and I hope I'm speaking to someone else that needs to hear this message, is like, as soon as I knew I was going to reach that goal, it wasn't even always like right when I reached it. It's like, oh, I got this one in the bag. If I didn't have the next thing lined up, there would be this real low afterwards. It was like I was waiting for this high and this like, okay, I did it. And so then I would just stack them. Before I would finish this one, as I'm finishing it, I'm like already on to the next one. And so that means I was even more looking into the future because I didn't want to feel those like high highs and low lows. And man, the maturity that you have, the insight that you have at such a young age, like is gosh, such a blessing. Like your life is going to be incredibly joyful. It took me many, many years older than you to figure out that I needed to learn to enjoy the journey on the way to each of the goals that I've set for myself.
Yeah. I mean, it came from losing family, right? Like I seen, you work your entire life, you think, and retirement's going to be everything for you. I don't want to retire because if I'm retiring, I'm getting away from, I think of it like through the podcast, right? If retirement was ending the podcast, I'm missing out on speaking with an amazing human every week. Like that's awesome. There's nothing that I get more enjoyment from. And it's for you when you get off a podcast and you have more energy than you did before the podcast, right? Like I think you can probably resonate with that. There's a reason you got to over 300 episodes because it gives you energy, it doesn't drain energy from you. One thing I wanted to touch on when it comes to the goals mindset, it's definitely something I still struggle with to this day. It's still a constant thing that I'm working on. But something that has come up to my awareness recently is that I think we give too much intention on the achievement instead of the anticipation. Like you said, there is like right before I'm about to achieve the goal, you're like, it's gravy. It's right there. So let me set the next thing for it.
Yeah.
But if we think of dopamine, right? We think dopamine is like picking up our phone and going on our phone, but dopamine's right before it. Dopamine is what happens before you achieve the goal. So it's the anticipation of achieving a thing. And so if you see anything in life, if you give yourself the anticipation, like Tim Ferriss does this with his, like if he sets a vacation, he'll set a vacation a year in advance. So he has the anticipation for that so far ahead that he's getting excited months before. I recently booked a trip to Costa Rica. I leave next Friday because I have this idea that I work from home. I get to do whatever I want now. I make my own hours, but I'm still sitting in my room doing all of the work here because the routine, everything feels great. But if I have the ability to go do that, well, let me do that because I'm practicing what I preach. I'm telling you what I'm saying throughout this podcast. So I think just one thing for a lot of people is maybe you haven't achieved the goal that you want to achieve yet, but think of how much more enjoyable achieving it will be with all of the anticipation of achieving it. Like if you are on YouTube for example, and your first video gets 1 million views, then your standard is 1 million views. And if you get 900,000, it's not going to be a success because you always need to one up yourself. And so I think that is a really good way to look at just goals in itself. If you achieve all your goals now, you are always going to have to continue to one up yourself. And then it's not as fun.
That's right. All right. Anything else around, like, what have you seen? What are the results that come out of consistently like leading and making decisions with the intention and the proactiveness? How does that transform someone's business or someone's life?
I'd say it leaves you with less regret. I think one thing that a lot of us, we live with is, I wish I did this. I wish by 30 I had this accomplished, all of these things. And really what it comes down to is being intentional with what are you doing with your time? Because we throw a lot of our time away. I had a podcast with Matthew Dix, who wrote the book Storyworthy, really, really great book. And what he kind of sees his life through is we look at life through hours. What if you look through life through minutes? Imagine all the minutes we throw away just scrolling on our phone. What I can give you so many different things that we just do instead of doing the things that's most important to us. And so just being more intentional with our time will help us get to the end of the day. Great, it was full, but do I feel fulfilled? As we spoke about earlier. A lot of us just aren't fulfilled with our lives. And I think you'll have a lot more fulfillment if you're intentional with what you're doing, because we go to instant dopamine and short pleasures because we don't have anything meaningful to go towards.
Yeah. So a theme that I feel like I'm hearing in our conversation is that you have to keep checking in with yourself and asking yourself what you want. And when that happens, it's the precursor usually to a big decision that needs to be made, right? Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I have to tell this person no. I have to, whatever that looks like. Do you have any advice for the person that says, I don't even want to ask the questions because, oh my gosh, then I have to follow through and I have to change things. And what if I really answer, I don't love my business? Or what if I answer, I don't love my clients? Like, it's not even the answer that's scary. It's like, okay, now what do you do with that answer? Any advice around navigating that?
Yeah, I think the thing that comes up for me, and let me know if this is like what you're looking for, is that I think a lot of us are going towards what we think we're supposed to want rather than what we actually want. And so I think just taking inventory of yourself of like, am I doing what I actually want to do, or am I doing what I feel like I'm supposed to do? And so real estate, for example, I felt like I was supposed to finish that. Everyone looked around me. You just spent a lot of time. Take the test, man. Just take the test. And even if you never use it, but I thought, well, after 2 years, I'm gonna have to take another test. And it's just time that I don't want to spend doing something that I know isn't going to fulfill me. And so really take inventory. Am I going towards something that I'm supposed to go down, or what I feel I'm supposed to go down, or am I doing what I actually want to do? And that's going to take a lot of time in silence. Meditation has been something that's profound for me. Going on walks without headphones sounds crazy, right? Like no one does anything without something in their ears anymore, any kind of stimulation. But that's been the most powerful thing for me, is just being with myself and just letting my intuition almost speak to myself, because the more that we take in outside information from others, the smaller and the softer that voice of our intuition gets. And if we give ourselves more time with ourselves to reflect and actually be honest and take inventory,
Yeah.
I think our intuition will shine right through and we'll have the answers that we need.
Yeah. So that was great. I think what I was looking at was you listen to the intuition, you know what the answer is, but now you've got to follow through.
Gotcha.
And one of the episode working titles that I have for a solo episode is The Power of Claiming It. I don't even know if it'll end up being an episode. Maybe not now that we're going to talk about it here too now. But the essence of what that episode was going to be is like, there's things that we know, but can you actually like take a stand and claim it? Can you make that decision that says, you know what, this business model, these hours that I'm working, it no longer serves me. It's not intentional. This is not what brings me joy. And once you can verbalize it because you sat with yourself and you know what it is you need, you got to claim it. You got to take the action to change the schedule, to make decisions in the business that maybe don't require as much of your work. Like the follow through on these ahas, for you, the follow through was, I'm not going to take a test in this example that you've shared with us. But sometimes when we're asking these questions around our lives or our businesses, it's like on the other side of that is what can feel very fearful. And I'm just saying, like, if you can claim that, fear or not, on the other side, you will be more joyful. Like, walk that decision through. And then just to connect a dot with what you've been saying too, is not to shit on yourself. You shouldn't have to work this many hours if it's not bringing you joy. So what do you want? Claim it, and then move through that decision.
Absolutely. When it comes to claiming it, the thing that comes up for me is ever since I hired my first coach, I have not been without a coach. And so for a lot of people, they'll tell themselves they're a coach, but they have no coach. I don't really get that. That doesn't make any sense to me. If you believe in it, how are you going to tell someone else to hire you as a coach if you don't have a coach yourself? If you're not trying to improve yourself, then how can you help others improve them? And so for me, I truly believe that if you want to, like you said, it's making the decision then, right? We know what we need to do. Now it's making the decision, claiming it, and actually taking action. I think we just need accountability. At the end of the day, and that's really what my coaching is helping people get out of their own way, because we'll always find a way to get in our own way. And if for me and for many of us, if we don't have someone outside of us holding us accountable, we are going to get in our own way. And we're going to tell ourselves stories around why it's like justifying it, just giving ourselves reasons to justify it. And we need someone outside of us to help us break through that story. One thing I find that happens often with clients is that we'll hop on the call, and let's say that they had an action item from last call and we're talking about it first call. The first thing I bring up is, did you do X? And they'll bring up excuse. They'll bring up an excuse. And in the middle of bringing up the excuse, they'll be honest with themselves. They'll laugh about it or something like that. And they'll bring up the reality of it because I'm right here. They can't lie to me because I can just shine right through. And so I think that's one thing that if you have someone outside of you or just putting your back against the wall, like coaching for me, I knew I wanted to start a podcast. I didn't know I wanted to become a coach, but that's what I was doing in the process. I would have not done that if I didn't spend more money than I had because I didn't have anything riding on it. I didn't even have the money in my bank account. So I had to go work and get clients to even pay for what I just paid for. And so really putting your back against the wall and investing in yourself, I think is the best way to do it, because if you don't invest into yourself, you have no skin in the game. It's kind of like, I want this. There's a big difference between interested and being committed to something. And I think that's where the claiming it comes down to, is when you commit to something and you claim it, you invest into it and you really tell yourself this is going to happen. And then you have external accountability. There's no way it can't happen at that point. I think you just said it's a when, not an if.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to your point about, coaches having coaches, I agree. And I always had a business coach, and then my areas of improvement changed and I would seek a coach. I have a health coach. I've had mindset coaches. I have had all different types, because it's the accountability. It's partnering with somebody where you're working together on achieving these goals. And there's just this trust, and it's about showing up consistently, right? So you were talking about the action items and then showing up on the next call. That cadence of meeting with somebody and a coach is something you're not going to wiggle out of, which most people, not everybody, but most people do when it's a party of one. And they're like, they can negotiate with themselves. They can tell themselves any kind of story. So I agree with you. I just wanted to speak to that point. And what I heard you say is that if you're having a difficult time after, you've made the decision and claiming it, because mindset gets in the way, accountability is like, find someone you can partner with, a coach, a mentor, someone that's going to help you navigate that path.
Absolutely. I think it's a necessity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This was a great conversation, very insightful. I would love for my audience to hear more about you, your podcast, and where they can connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was an awesome conversation. The best places to find me is James Brackin IV on any social platform, and then the You Can Too podcast on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, James.
Thank you.
I've loved having you listen to this episode of the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. And I sure hope you found my conversation with James to be inspiring. I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. I have said this at the end of every episode for 319 episodes. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So when James reached out about talking about getting intentional with our actions to get exceptional results, and then once I researched him, and by the way, fun fact, outside of having my own son on the podcast, this is our youngest guest. 20 years old, started his business, his podcast, and his coaching business at 17 years old. Talk about walking the talk, having incredible insight, and taking action. And he didn't just stop there. He came to us and told us how we can also be inspired to take that intentional action, no matter where and what season of life we find ourselves in, no matter what season our business is in, how valuable it is to take action. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with him as much as I did. I have a question for you. Have you thought or are thinking about hiring a coach? If you are, now is the time to be talking to me. Don't wait. I am inviting you to just have a conversation with me. And it's not just any conversation. It's a conversation that will potentially get you on the quickest path to improving your time management and elevating your productivity so you can be a better business owner and truly enjoy your success. Whether you're looking for one-on-one private coaching or group coaching, head on over to amberdelagarza.com/call to schedule today. I would really love to explore this with you and talk to you and determine if us working together is the next best step for you and your business. And if you are new here, I just want to say welcome. Thank you so much. Be sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And for all you longtime listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with James, be sure to share it with another business owner and don't keep this podcast a secret. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.